It's Dr. Katherine Kelly. I want to talk to you a little bit today about karmic relationships and why they are so difficult. I do a lot of work about talking about the soul because to me, it is about bringing ancient wisdom to the modern soul. In other words, how do we bring this information about how we used to live life in centuries past and generations past, and how do we bring it to now? And one of the most important things to think about is how our relationships affect our lives, how they affect our soul's path, how they affect our evolution. And it's one of those things where I cannot tell you how many people contact me for Akashic record readings or past life readings or even coming to psychotherapy to figure out what the heck is going on in the relationships. It's really relationships are really how we learn most. When we have these soul to soul relationships with someone, it is about how is it that we come together? Why is it we come together? And that's a whole other video. I have another video that I talk about what I call sort of the magnetic connection of life, and I will talk to you more about that. But today I really want to talk to you about why our karmic connections with someone are so difficult and why they're so complicated and really what it is that relationships are about. So I love props, and I brought some props because I want to help you understand this from a very tangible level. Visual kind of images tend to really help people understand what the heck is going on. And so that's why I use a lot of metaphors. That's why I use a lot of, again, props. So I want to talk a little bit about the karmic matrix. And what I call the karmic matrix is, each and every person has a karmic matrix that basically composes who they are. So it has to do with all past life experiences, any lessons that you're supposed to learn. It has to do with any dynamics in your current lifetime that are playing a part. And it most importantly also has to do with how we relate to others. So everything from our past leads to how we interact with individuals now. Some of that is how we cope. Some of that is our defense mechanism. Some of that is our wounds from the past. Some of that is how we've learned to communicate or not communicate. Some of that is our attraction to certain kinds of people because of the patterns we've had before. So it's all part of this karmic matrix. And so I'm going to give you some visuals. So if you consider yourself to have this, I don't even know what you would call this thing, but I bought these purposefully to make this really kind of tangible for people. But if you consider this to be your karmic matrix, so you have all of these pieces and parts that move together, that are wound together, that are tied together, that really make up the composition of who you are. And the fact that when we are growing, when we are expanding, we tend to expand our views. We tend to really expand our horizons, make new connections, make new understandings. So we expand our awareness. And then there are times when we contract that awareness because we're kind of doing life and life is busy. The human condition is keeping us kind of active or distracted. And so we go through many, many, many times in our lives when we have these contractions and expansions of our growth. And so when we think about how complicated our own matrix of life is, because again, we've got so many things that we're supposed to learn and grow from and evolve beyond. Here's basically our own matrix of life. But then you start introducing the matrix of someone else. So here's someone else. This could be an intimate relationship that you have with someone. So not only does your karmic, I'm going to try to position this so I can do this. Not only does your karmic matrix move and expand and contract according to what you're learning, what you're supposed to be experiencing, but so does the other person's. So basically, anybody that you have in your life is going to expand and contract throughout their life, depending on what it is they're supposed to learn. And so this is what happens when you're karmically related to someone. So, you see how complex your own matrix is. Then you have this other matrix of this other individual that's in your life. And then you have to consider how those pieces and parts interact. Sometimes they interact in a way that they move together and they're able to kind of learn and grow and expand and contract together. But what happens if one is expanding and the other is not? What happens if one is actually contracting when the other one is expanding? Bear with me for a minute. What happens if, in one of the expansions that it kind of pulls part of you away from that other person? So you might still have some of the karmic bonds, but they're not as tightly woven as they were in the very beginning. So you have these karmic threads, and I'm going to explain this, and I'm going to bring these out again in a second. You have these karmic threads or these karmic bonds that you have with people, and each one of them represents, I'll go ahead and use this one. Each one of these represents a facet of that person or a lesson that that person is supposed to be exploring in their life. And what happens as you learn and grow is, again, you're going to have this expansion and contraction of, wow, I'm really understanding this. I'm really getting this. And then something happens in the human condition. Then you have to pull back and do the human condition. Then you have the other person doing the same thing, going through some major changes, going through some major disturbances in their life. And so we have to think about the fact that these rarely expand and contract at the same pace and at the same time. And sometimes that's a good thing because whoever we are karmically connected with sometimes can help carry us when we're going through a lot. When we are going through these expansions and contractions, sometimes we need someone to kind of bolster us and hold us in place or hold ground for us. And vice versa. When you're in a relationship, whether it's a close friendship, a family relationship, a intimate partnership, sometimes we have to switch roles. Excuse me. So sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes the other person is expanding and contracting because of whatever they're going through, and you are the one who has to carry them. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes those karmic reactions are all about you learning whatever it is you're supposed to learn in conjunction to that other person's growth so that you can both expand and contract at the same time. But what happens if one person's matrix is clashing with the other one? And that is where most people contact me. That's where most people come to therapy. That's where most people come for spiritual readings and spiritual support, is to figure out, wow, what do I do with this? What do I do with this fact that I'm no longer getting along with this person, or I'm clashing with this person, or wow, we've been trying this for years or decades and it's just not working. So think about karmic reactions. One thing that I have learned years ago, and I paid attention to, and I use this with clients all the time, is the whole idea that relationships come together because those two souls, or multiple souls, depending on the dynamic of the situation, those souls are supposed to come together in order to learn something that has been either predestined for us, or that it's creating sort of the opportunity to outgrow an old pattern from other relationships, whether it's this lifetime or previous lifetime. Sometimes those people come together just for the sake of learning, but they're not supposed to stay together. So sometimes we have this attraction towards someone because we are, again, karmically connected with them, and we are supposed to learn, we're supposed to grow. But then once that learning and growing is done, once you've had those experiences that you were supposed to have, you're kind of done, so that no matter what you do, you can't get this thing together again. Now, again, I'm going to talk to you about the magnet metaphor in the next video, so you're going to understand that whole dynamic. But the karmic connections, I'm going to go back to this for a second, because every time we understand through consciousness, every time we understand whatever it is that the lesson is, so just take this one for instance, whenever we get to the point where we're like, okay, wow, now I understand this. I understand why this is happening. Then what it does is it gives you the opportunity to either learn and grow with this other person, or realize, wow, I learned what I'm supposed to learn from this situation and I'm done. Now, that is when basically these start to pull apart. So when we have learned whatever we're supposed to learn from those karmic lessons, those karmic pathways, it's almost impossible for us to stay connected with that person unless it is part of those two people's paths to stay together, because they've outgrown, both of them have to outgrow the dynamic in order for them to continue in some sort of related course so that they can make it through this next level. So I know I'm talking really fast here, but I want you to imagine what brings people together. There's usually in that very beginning, there's this honeymoon period where people are loving life, and then it's not until later when you start to learn the different things that, wow, this person's really getting on my nerves, or wow, this dynamic is really reminding me of a pattern that I had way, 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 way back with someone else, or wow, this is really recapitulating a family dynamic from when I was young. It could be that you were here to outgrow an old issue of self-esteem or an old fear that you had. It could be that you had some karmic relationships with them in the past lives. So maybe you lost that person in a past life to a tragic death. You're clinging on to that person, but really what you're supposed to be doing is learning how to be strong and how to not be fearful so of losing that person. And so basically you're able to live without that person or that dynamic pretty easily. So there are so many different ways that these karmic matrices might be interacting. Now, here's the other thing. I have a few others of these. If I had a couple more hands, I could show you. If you think about a family dynamic, how is it that they all fit together? What are the karmic connections? What are whether it is a ancestral healing pattern, whether it is a karmic pattern from past lives, how do they all fit together and how do they differ? So, for instance, I was the youngest of five children. And my parents were older when they got married and when they had kids. And that was a little bit less common during their life because it was in a generation where people got married early. But my mother had me when I was 40 years old and she got married when she was 29. So there was already a different dynamic going on within the family constellation because it was unusual or atypical to get married later and also then have children later. And again, I was the youngest and she had me when she was 40. So basically, I grew up with an older parent. I grew up with, and my dad was 5 years older than her. So there's all these different karmic pieces that are connected depending on our family circumstances, our culture, our geographical location, our soul age. There's all these different parts that go into these matrices to help you understand, wow, this is why it is so complex. This is why it's so complicated. And so when I think about working with individuals, it's that whole idea of how do I help them understand from a karmic perspective why you come together, why you end up in the same family, why it is that you have difficulties, why it is that there are challenges or there's things to outgrow. It's because, from a soul evolution standpoint, we are here to expand. We are here to learn and grow. We are here to outgrow old patterns and evolve beyond them. And the only way we can really do that is to become conscious enough and get ourselves to that next level that we understand, wow, okay, so this is why I'm struggling. This is why, this particular lesson is related to that. This lesson's related to this. It's like a giant puzzle. It's just like a giant puzzle. But if you start to practice that conscious evolution, you will start to understand, wow, there are pieces and parts here. There are reasons why I'm supposed to understand each one of these things so that you can heal and move beyond it. So, personally speaking, like I said, I grew up as the youngest child of five people, five kids within the family. We did not live anywhere near any of our aunts and our uncles, any of our grandparents. My parents decided to move to Colorado. And so it was one of those things where we didn't have an extended family constellation. We didn't have a whole lot of these on the outer circuit. And I think that from a karmic perspective, that was purposeful because we were supposed to learn things within our own family constellation that we couldn't have probably learned had we stayed in, had they stayed or decided to live in the areas that either one of their parental families had lived in. So the constellation within the seven of us, if you imagine seven of these, you do have to take into consideration gender, soul age, astrological personality, past life trauma, past life karmic kind of connections and unfinished business. And that's all past life stuff. If you think about current relationship, we were in Colorado. We were distant from everybody, that was an extended family member. We also had, there were three girls and two boys as kids in the family. That created a different constellation. My dad had an accident when I was 9 years old. That jolted basically the constellations and the matrices. And so every factor of what we experience is related to this whole idea that we're supposed to expand and contract depending on what we're learning, depending on what we are kind of putting together as pieces of the puzzle and what it is that we evolve beyond so that we can kind of put that last piece of puzzle into place and then move on to the next one. We are complicated beings, and that is really why I'm getting ready to teach other practitioners and coaches and educators and administrators how to do what I do. Because once you start to understand these dynamics, you get to this place where it helps you feel through where it is that you need to unblock people, kind of unlock their stuck parts, help them understand why these karmic connections are there. And basically expand the view. And that's really what this is about is, conscious evolution is all about soul evolution. It is all about going within to figure out how it is that we do the healing that is necessary to take us further. So the karmic relationships, the karmic connections, again, might be very complex and sticky and icky, but boy, once you start to understand them, it all comes together. And it also helps free you from those connections. It helps you understand why they were in your life, what role they played and as part of your growth and your healing and your evolution. And it also helps you move beyond it. And that is something I tell people all the time is that it's not enough for me to help someone heal, because what that means to me is that you heal only back to the point where you were. I actually want to help people expand and evolve beyond that point so that they can enter that place of conscious evolution and understand their matrix in a way that it helps them heal. So how do we feel when we feel contracted? We don't feel very good. So my mission in soul healing work and helping people become soul healing specialists is to help them expand their view. So there's a lot more space. There's a lot more energy that moves beyond all of this and between all of this so that you can evolve. So I'm hoping this was helpful. Again, I like to bring very practical ideas and examples into these videos so that you can understand this. I have many, many more that I'm going to be sharing with you. But from the Soul 101 series, I just want people to start to think in a bigger way of, gosh, why was it that these karmic connections were difficult? Why is it that souls come together? What is the soul? So, this is really what the Soul 101 series is all about, is helping you understand yourself from an ancient perspective, but to bring it forward into living in the modern life. So that's why I often say ancient wisdom for the modern soul. It's bringing this into a very tangible, very understandable place, both for the sake of your healing and for the sake of your evolution. So I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear your comments. Have a wonderful day, and I will be back soon with more information for Soul 101. Take care. Bye-bye.